with the Pokemon Scarlet Indigo Disc DLC being released about a month ago now. The question is, which will actually come first? Generation 10, or will we actually get a bunch of past Pokemon that are still not actually available in the game? 200 of which are still probably really, really solid. We're going to be going over some of the better Pokemon that are like currently not available in Scarlet and Violet, and kind of just talking about if these mons were actually returned to the game, if they would actually be really good, kind of discussing, at least based off of what they had previously with their previous move pools, how they would kind of fare with Terra and some of the other new moves that are currently in the game. Or if we'll actually probably not see these Pokemon until like Generation 10. So there's actually a lot of really cool Pokemon that are still not even actually in the game. There's over, I think, 250 still. I think we have like 700. We have 730 that are actually in Scarlet and Violet. And I think there's 1,025 Pokemon now. So I do the math. I think that's over like 200 something Pokemon currently. So go look. There's an entire list on like the our Pokemon Reddit of all the Pokemon that we actually do not have in the games currently. There's a lot of really good stuff that actually is still not in the games. Just going into this video though, the one thing I'm not going to be talking about is like legendaries or like Ultra Beast, because those coming back are absolute like game changers anyways. I wanted to do just like the regular like Pokemon, like non-legendaries. The only one I'm going to include on this list is mainly because I really like it. It's a mythical, but I don't think it's going to be really that game breaking if it ever does come back. I don't think it will anytime soon, but it's mainly because I'm biased towards it. But all the other Pokemon on this list that we're going to be talking about today are kind of just like your normal stuff. No Tapus, no legendary Ultra Beasts, that type of thing that are currently not in the game. Even though I would love to see them come back, and I think the Tapus and a bunch of other stuff like Ultra Beasts and a few others legendaries that are currently not in the game could be huge game changers. Whether they're actually illegal in VGC or not, or even like in singles, we don't know. But first Pokemon I want to talk about is Crobat. Crobat's one of my favorite Gen 3 mons, or at least that's when it was. I think I'm not sure if it's. I know it was around probably before Gen 3, but it was one of my favorite mons to use in Gen 3. Zubat's been around forever, same with Golbat and stuff. But the main thing I want to talk about this, it has a really good speed tier. 130 speed is actually really, really good, and the poison flying typing is not really bad. It's actually a pretty solid typing. You also have some solid abilities. Inner Focus, you're immune to Intimidate, which is huge, and you cannot be flinched. That's great for VGC. Infiltrator ain't too bad either, because there is some screens play, stuff like Aurora Veil and like double screens with Light Screen and Reflect that can be used with, probably mainly in singles though. But that's kind of just the main thing with this thing. You also have Terra now, which could be pretty good. You can Terra into like a ground type or like a defensive Terra with the Crobat. Its defenses really aren't the greatest, but like ED isn't too bad. The main problem, the main thing with this thing is probably it's going to be more of a supporter. Like a 130 Tailwind could actually be really, really solid. I think it would be one of the fastest non booster energy Tailwind setters we have currently in the game. Or at least currently, if it can't come back to the game, that would actually be able to use it if it actually gets Tailwind. I'm pretty sure it does. I am pretty sure it gets Tailwind. Does this thing get Tailwind? I'm pretty sure it did. Yeah, it got Tailwind, so I'm assuming it'll probably get Tailwind back if it did come back to the games. At the current moment, though, like all these Pokemon we'd be talking about as well, if they did come back to the games, it would be great, but like at least currently when I'm recording this, there's nothing that confirms or like says that they're going to be coming back to the game at any point. The main thing now is we had I think it was the prologue for the game. There was a recent DLC with Pecharunt and like a 1.5 hour prologue ending to like the DLC that was recently released when I'm recording this. So we have like no other stuff confirmed, like at least for DLC content or like future updates for Scarlet and Violet at this point when I'm recording this. So the question is, will Gen 10 be released before all these Pokemon return? Or are they saving like an update for like Pokemon Day in February when they're going to return like the majority of like the missing 200 Pokemon to the game? That's kind of what a lot of people are thinking. They still might come to the game, but they're just waiting later on for like the next month or two. So hopefully that's the case, and they bring them all into the game for free as like a DLC. That'd be kind of cool. It does get other decent amount of move pool. Like it gets flying moves, it gets your poison moves, it has self-sustain with Roost. I don't want to sit here and talk about a lot of this stuff forever, just because I have a lot of mons to talk about, like 4 whole teams of mons I want to talk about. So there's There's not going to be too much on screen either, so if you just want to tab out, listen to me talk as well. I'll be just kind of going through move sets and stuff on screen. But it also gets U-turn, taunt, a fast taunt user, Super Fang is really good if that comes back. There's probably a bunch of other moves that would probably get coming back to the game. So Cross Poison's pretty good. You can't get Intimidated. That's huge. And I think this thing would be really good. I think Crobat coming back would be really, really solid. It has all the stats and really solid typing, and with Terra, it's even better. I think Crobat would actually be really solid coming back. It's a really shame it's not in the game. Next one I kind of want to briefly talk about is Alakazam. It has really great stats. 120 speed, 135 special attack. This thing is always a beast. And I think if you add a Terra to this thing, even like a Stellar Terra, the main thing that Alakazam likes to do is just run like Stab plus a bunch of coverage moves. And like Stellar Terra would actually be like really useful on this thing. It usually runs like a Psychic type move, and then usually like a bunch of coverage like Focus Blast, Energy Ball. It gets Dazzling Gleam. That being all boosted by a Stellar Terra just for the first time you use it would make this thing way, way better. Even like any other Terra on this thing, like even a defensive Terra would be great. Just a really solid mon. I really miss Alakazam. Hopefully it comes back. I don't know how this thing's not even in the game. How is Alakazam one of the mons that actually is not even in the game? I don't know. This thing gets a crazy move pool. Assuming a lot of this stuff does come back, if it was put back into the game. I don't know if it would get Teleport back. I'm assuming that's something it wouldn't get back. But a lot of this other stuff, like Trick and a bunch of other stuff, would probably come back. It has a shitty, like a real huge, like shit ton of moves to use for move pool, which is huge. This next mon I'm going to talk about briefly is Galarian Rapidash. There's going to be some people that say, oh, well, Galarian Rapidash, this mon sucks. I'm going to be real with you guys. I've never used this mon. I think this mon looks really cool to use. I think its typing is really cool. I think the last time it was actually in the game was, I think, for Sword and Shield it was in. Those of you guys that play Sword and Shield, let me know in the comments down below. I never played those games, and I never actually used Galarian Rapidash at all. I just think this would be a really cool mon. It has decent stats and a really cool typing, and it looks cool. I don't know how good it would actually be if it were returned back to the game, but I thought I'd just briefly mention it. Maybe with Terra, it would be a little bit better. I'm not sure. But I can't really talk about it very much just because I haven't really used it that much either. I never played Sword and Shield, so like the last game before Scarlet and Violet I actually played was, I guess technically Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but those were like remakes and those were garbage. I guess like the actual last main series game I played was Ultra Sun and Moon, so I'd have to go based off that, but this was never in the game. It was only regular Rapidash, which was kind of mid at best. Moving on, Togekiss. Togekiss coming back. This thing with Terra would be crazy. You have the Serene Grace, you have the Air Slash, which is the main thing. You pair that with a King's Rock, and you can just flinch for days. It's crazy, mod. I think this thing would be incredibly good coming back. It has really solid stats. 80 speed is not too bad, even still. You throw a Scarf on there, even like Undertale Wind would be really good, or like Sticky Web, or like with speed support, like an Electro Web or Icy Wind user would be really good. Really solid Spit F, really solid special attack, decent bulk. Fairy Flying is an incredibly good typing, especially currently. I think this would be a great typing. Plus you have Terra, so you can Terra into like a Steel type for defensive utility, or like any type you really want, whether even for like an offensive type, or even like run Terra Blast or something on this thing. It gets a decent amount of moves as well, like Serene Grace boosted Ancient Power would be kind of cool. It gets Aura Sphere, at least it would get all this stuff if it does come back, that is. Dazzling Gleam, bunch of other stuff. It gets Fire type coverage. I don't think it would get Heal Bell back because I think they removed that from the game for most of the stuff, but a lot of the stuff it probably would come back. It's a really solid one. It has a decent support move pool too. It gets Ruse, it gets Self-Recovery, Soft Boiled if that comes back, T-Wave, Wish, Yawn. It gets Yawn support, which is huge, Tailwind, bunch of other really cool stuff. It actually gets After You as well, which is a faster mon that has After You, which currently there's not many in the game that actually have that are actually pretty fast, or like fast without weather. I think the main one is Under Sun is I think Hisui and Lilligant, but that would be kind of cool to use. A few other things, not really too much else crazy. That'll just be like the stuff that we know would be coming back, or at least the majority of the stuff that would probably be coming back with it. There's a bunch of other new moves in the game it might get as well, which could be kind of cool. But I think Togekiss will be coming back would be great. I don't really care going against it because it's just the flinch fest, because that's what people like to run with it. But it's really fun using the Mon, but it's one of those Mons that you hate playing against because it's just non-stop flinching. That's how a lot of people just run it. They just run Air Slash with like King's Rock or Choice Scarf and just flinch you to death. I don't know how cool it would actually be playing against that, but it would be fun to use at least. Next thing I'm going to talk about briefly is Obstagoon. I think this thing coming back, especially with Terra, would be really good. With Terra, you can actually just form into a Ghost type, so you can get rid of your 4 times fighting weakness. Even like another defensive type would be really, really good, like a Water type or like something that doesn't really have that many like weaknesses at all. You have really good abilities. You have Guts. You have Defiant, which is huge right now with all the Intimidate running around. Huge, really good ability. You also have Guts, so you can pretty much status yourself, run a Flame Orb or a Toxic Orb on this thing, and just run Guts, and you can pretty much get crazy amounts of damage. It also has a really solid move pool, assuming all this stuff does return, if it does come back to the game. You have fighting coverage, you have your normal coverage, you get knockoff, you also get Parting Shot, which is really, really good. You have Ghost coverage and Shadow Claw. You get Switcheroo, Taunt, a fast Taunt's pretty good. Bunch of other really cool stuff. It gets kind of the same move pool as Zigzagoon and Lanoon does, and their move pools have always been really good because you just get so much random stuff. Not a lot of stuff that's actually useful, but they just get a huge move pool. So, really cool Mon. I think Obstagoon's really cool too, and it's another one of those Mons similar to like Galarian Rapidash that I never was really able to use because I never played Sword and Shield, so I would love for it to come back because I would really want to use this Mon. I think it would be incredibly good with Terra. This is one of the Mons I think that would be really beneficial with Terra because it has the 4 times weak just to fighting, and that's one of the main things that would hold it back. And being able to like Terra into a defensive type like a Ghost type or even something else would be huge for this thing. It also has really solid stats. 95 speed ain't bad, especially under Tailwind. You have a solid defense stat. You have decent HP. Not bad at all. Exploud I'm not going to talk about very much, but I think this thing under Trick Room could be pretty good. 68 speed isn't the slowest thing ever, but I think under Trick Room with like a Terra normal, this thing also gets Boom Burst. It gets Boom Burst, and it also gets, I think, Scrappy, which is kind of cool. I think the only problem here is you're kind of competing with like Blood Moon or Ursaluna, which has Mind's Eye, and it's just overall kind of a better Mon. But I think under Trick Room, this thing could have like a small niche, especially like Terra Normal. Run like a Choice Specs on this thing, or like a Throat Spray. I think it could be pretty good. It has decent HP. I mean, 91 isn't too bad for special attack. I just kind of wanted to throw it on here because I think it's a really cool Mon. It could have a kind of a cool niche in like Trick Room as like a normal spam like Boom Burst user. I don't think Ursaluna gets Boom Burst. I think it only gets Hyper Voice. So that'd be kind of one reason to use this thing, but I think that'd be the only main problem with Exploud coming back. It'd be kind of outclassed by Ursaluna in most ways, apart from like a few. But it also gets a bunch of other coverage moves. A lot of physical coverage, but it also gets some other special coverage. You got Blizzard and Fire coverage and a few other things, so it just has a decent move pool, but you're mainly just going to be spamming normal moves with this thing. That's kind of always what Expel really was. Moving on, let's talk about some more stuff real quick. I don't want this video to be like incredibly long, but there's a lot of stuff I like to talk about. So, Sharpedo I want to talk about a little bit as well. Hopefully this thing comes back. It's one of my favorite Gen 3 Mons. I love Sharpedo. It also gets Speed Boost, which I think would be kind of cool. It has a decent speed of 95. I think the one thing people that would not really even consider is like with a speed boost with like max speed, you're one of the Mons, like unlike Blaziken. I think Blaziken has 80 speed. With base 95, you'd be able to get away with running, I think, like an Adamant Nature and being able to at +1 outspeed, I think, like Flutter Mane and like even all the other really fast stuff currently, like at least for VGC format, without having to run like a Jolly Nature, which Blaziken's kind of forced to do. So that'd be kind of cool. And you also have 120 attack, which is pretty good. You have a really solid attack stat. You get with Terra, you can run like Terra Water, even like Terra Dark. I think this thing gets knockoff, doesn't it? Oh, it doesn't get knockoff. Maybe it would get knockoff if it came back. Hopefully Game Freak sees this, and if Sharpedo comes back, it'll get knockoff. That's the one thing I don't care for, but you still have Crunch, which is pretty good. You have Priority with Aqua Jet. You actually get Flip Turn, which is pretty good. You got a bunch of other stuff. A really fast Destiny Bond could be really good as well. I don't know. A really solid mon. I think Sharpedo coming back would be pretty cool. I would love to use Sharpedo again. I think it's a really solid mon. I think speed boost, especially with 95 speed, is really, really solid. And it gets a pretty solid move pool. The only problem is its defenses are garbage. The main problem with this thing coming back would be like it would be really weak to priority and that type of thing. And it kind of get intimidated to death by like a lot of the intimidate mons. Even though you're a water type, you'd still be able to hit like Incineroar and Landorus and a few of the other ones for super effective damage, but at -1, I don't think you'd be hitting as hard, so you'd have to kind of either Terra into a water type or do something there, but really cool mon. I wanted to briefly mention it. I think it's Sharpedo is one of my favorites, at least for me. I know a lot of people like Sharpedo as well, so. Another one I want to talk about briefly is Roserade. This mon's always been really solid, mainly as more of like a support mon. You see it in singles a lot. It has, I think it's dual hazard. I think it's toxic spikes and spikes. I think it gets sleep powder. I think it gets sleep powder and a few other things. Ain't too bad. It also has natural cure. It gets technician, which ain't too bad. It was a lot better. Technician was way better when it had hidden power. So it actually, technically it loses hidden power, which is, it was good with technician for Terra, but arguably Terra is just way like a million times better. I think this thing with the Terra would be pretty good. Like you can Terra into like a fire type, which would be kind of cool for this thing or something else. Grass Poison Stab is also pretty good. It ain't too bad. It just kind of depends what move pool they would give this thing, because I know Aromatherapy wouldn't come back. That they removed that from a lot of mons. But it gets decent coverage, mainly like your Sludge Bomb and Grass coverage, but it gets a few other coverage moves, and with Terra, I think it could be a little bit better. I don't think it's going to be like a top tier mon coming back. I think it would be way better in singles, apart from like doubles, but I kind of wanted to mention it because Roserade is always one of those really consistent mons a lot of people like to use. The only legendary / like mythical I wanted to briefly mention on this list was Victini. Victini is at least one of my favorite legends. I wish this thing would come back. This thing's a beast in singles. I think with Terra, this thing would be fucking busted. You got base 100s across the board with the Victory Star, with V-Create. Imagine V-Create with a Terra Fire. Terra Fire V-Create with a Choice Band. That is already base 180. Pretty much 100% accuracy with Victory Star. And then you add a Choice Band plus a Terra boost on top of that. I do not know what lives a banded Terra Fire like V-Create. If somebody wants to do some crazy calcs, let me know what you find, but I don't think there's anything that really lives that at all. I think that would be fucking busted, and especially if they give this thing a bunch of other coverage. It gets Expanding Forest too if you want to run this thing special. I think it could be really decent under terrain. Like, granted, it's a mythical, so this thing will never come back, like, or at least be legal in VGC in, like, an official format, but that doesn't mean you can't go on, like, the casual doubles ladder and spam this thing, if you really wanted to, even, like, singles. You can go in singles. It's always been a beast in singles anyways. You also have electric coverage with Bold Strike and special with Blue Flare, which is kind of cool. Gets a bunch of other cool stuff. Flame Charge. I don't think it'll get Power Up Punch back, but Searing Shot's pretty cool. 30% chance to burn. If that comes back, I don't know. A lot of stuff we don't know if it'll actually return if it does come back, but it always got a really solid move pool. It has the stats to back it up. It's a great mon. I think it would be busted with Terra, though. I just kind of wanted to briefly mention it in this list. Another one I kind of want to briefly mention is Gigalith. What this would actually do is actually bring another really good Sand Force user to the game. Same with, like, Sandstream. Currently, the only two Sandstream setters we actually have in the game are Hippowdon and Tyranitar. I think Gigalith, being a pure rock type, would actually add a really good, like, third sand setter to the game if it did return. Plus, this thing has Terra. I think Terra for this thing would be really good. The main problem with Gigalith is the rock typing. The rock typing has never been really crazy good, and it's kind of weak to a lot of the more common stuff, grass, rock, that type of thing. Being able to Terra this thing, I think, would be huge. Terra into like a ghost or even like a water type or whatever you want to Terra into, and just being able to dodge, even like a flying type to dodge the ground type moves would be really, really good. And I think it also gets Iron Defense. Yeah, it used to get Iron Defense. I'm assuming it would again, and probably Body Press. It does get Body Press, which I think would be really, really solid. I don't know, it gets a bunch of other stuff too. It gets decent rock type moves. It gets Autotomize. I don't know if that would be any good or if that would even return, but a bunch of other stuff. Rock Blast, Rock Polish. Not really the craziest move pool, but it gets what it really needs, I guess. I don't know, that'd be kind of the only thing that would maybe really hold this mon back, but I just kind of wanted to briefly mention it because I think as a sand setter, it'd be kind of cool having it back. And I always liked Gigalith. Gigalith was always my favorite out of the three mons that would set up sand ever since they gave Sandstream to Gigalith. I think it was like in Gen 6, so. Another one I wanted to mention briefly is actually Scolipede. Now, apart from Sharpedo, I said Sharpedo earlier would be like one of like the best speed boost mon in the game. Or at least, I guess there's a bunch of other speed boost mons that are currently in Scarlet Violet, because I know a Spothra, and there's like one or two others that actually get speed boost. But at least ones that are actually like viable in VGC, or at least could be viable. I think Scolipede could be viable. I think the main problem, though, is its attack really isn't the greatest, so it can get Intimidate spammed, but it also gets the speed boost, and it gets a few other really cool things. I think with Terra, it could be decent. I don't think this mon would be crazy. I think it's kind of gotten power crept if it would be put into the game. At least currently, it'd be a little bit power crept, but with speed boost, this thing's always been crazy. It was a beast back in Gen 5, Gen 6, and always got a solid move pool, and it depends what they would give this thing as well. It also gets top Baton Pass, so you can Baton Pass speed boost out, which kind of makes it unique. Get the Poison Jab, a few other things. Steel Roller, I think a Steel Roller would be kind of cool because terrain's pretty common. It gets rid of the Psychic terrain or grassy terrain. Just to get rid of terrain would be kind of cool. I don't know, Terra into a Steel type and go for Steel Roller. I think that'd be some crazy shit to try to do. I don't know. It gets Sword Stance too, which is pretty good, but I don't know. I think the main problem with this thing is kind of a bug type. The bug typing doesn't really do much for this mon. It's a bug type because it's obviously a bug, but I just think that would be the kind of main thing that kind of holds it back. And it has 100 base attack, which really isn't the greatest anymore, but I kind of wanted to mention it because Scolipede's a really cool mon. It's one of my favorites from Gen 5. It was decent in the past. I just don't know how good it would actually really be coming into the game if it were to return. Next one I want to talk about is Darmanitan. You can probably also like tack on like Galarian Darmanitan into this. I don't know if Galarian Darmanitan would even be legal. I mean, it would probably get banned because Smogon are a bunch of crybabies. They probably ban that instantly up to Ubers, but for VGC, it would probably come back just for Darmanitan. It has really good abilities. Zen Mode's also really, really cool. That'd be kind of cool to see. Sheer Force is also really solid. This thing would just hit like a truck. The main thing you're going to be doing with this thing is just throwing it under like Tailwind or throwing a Scarf or even like a Band on this thing and just clicking moves. It's kind of what Darmanitan does. It gets fire coverage. I think with Terra it could be a little bit better. Especially like Terra Fire, just going for damage. I think that'd be crazy. It would be one of the better fire types in the game, even if like Darmanitan came back. It's like that thing, a few of the best fire types right now are like Entei and Incineroar. And I think this thing would have like a really specific niche, just being able to hit really, really hard, and still having a really solid speed tier. And I guess you have Galarian Darmanitan too, but I'm not going to really talk about that one because we know how broken that one is. Like I said, Smogon are a bunch of crybabies, so if that did come back for singles, that would probably be instantly banned up to Ubers. But for VGC, I think it would be pretty solid, especially with Terra, because the ice typing really isn't the greatest, but being able to get rid of that typing and go into more of like a defensive typing would be pretty good for that thing. I have a few more to talk about. We're going to talk about a few more here, and then I'm going to be done. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys made it this far. What mon do you guys want to see return, hopefully, to the game, if they do bring back like some of the Pokemon that still have not returned for Scarlet and Violet, if they decide to do that, or before the next generation or next game drops, or whatever they decide to do. If you guys want to see anything return, what would it be? Let me know in the comments down below. Another mon I want to briefly mention is Ferrothorn. I think this thing would be incredibly good. Mainly in like Rain. I think Rain's really common right now, and it's especially alongside like Tornadus, and there's a decent amount of Rain sitters with Politoed and Pelipper in the game. And Rain's decently solid with a lot of the electric types, like, I mean, not really electric type, but like Archlodon. There's a few other electric types that kind of like the Rain or Shifu and that type of thing. I think Ferrothorn being a steel fire type, especially with Terra, being able to get rid of the 4 times weakness to fire would be incredible. It really would. I don't know what you really do in this thing though, because it's always more of a stally mon. It doesn't really have the greatest offensive stats, but I guess maybe this thing gets Iron Defense. It does get Iron Defense, maybe Body Press. It gets Iron Defense, Body Press. There you go. There's what you go for. You Terra into a water type or like a fire type, and then you go for Iron Defense, Body Press, and you just kill everything. There you go. Under Rain. That way they can't do anything to you. It gets Knockoff, Leech Seed. It had a really solid move pool to begin with. I don't know how much of this would actually come back if they brought it into the game, but I just wanted to mention it because I think this thing would be incredibly good. Ferrothorn's always been a really incredibly good mod, just mainly because of its typing and its really solid bulk and really good solid move pool. It's a really good mod. It also has some decent abilities. I guess in anticipation you're never going to really use. But like Iron Barbs paired with a Rocky Helmet could be really, really good. Especially if you're going against their Shifu, because they can't really do much versus you. Especially if you go like a Terra Water. I guess you don't really even need a Terra. I guess they can hit you with like close combat, but like if you invent like max defense or max HP, I don't know how much that would actually really do. But you could always just go like Terra Water, and they can't really do much versus you. And you have the Iron Barbs plus probably like a Rocky Helmet on this thing, and you can kind of just one-shot them in return with like a Power Whip or whatever they really want to do. So I think it would be that good in that sense, just like countering some of the more like really heavy meta type stuff like Urshifu and a few other things. And I said that with a lot of other mons too, but they turned out not really being that good when they were brought back with a few of the DLCs that are already in the game. So I don't know. Cofagrigus, same with like Runigerus, you can kind of put them together because they're kind of the same. I think these coming back would be kind of cool because they give you a really slow Ghost type in Trick Room, which I don't think we really have that much right now. Granted, I don't know what they really do. The main problem is that they're kind of passive in Trick Room. And what you really want in Trick Room right now is if you get the Trick Room up, you just want to be really, really offensive. They take some setup to try to actually do stuff with. I think that's kind of the main problem with Cofagrigus and Runigerus. But I think if you can like run Calm Mind, it gets Nasty Plot. So you can run Nasty Plot setup for one turn. It has the bulk to like take multiple hits. It has crazy bulk. It's lacking a little bit in HP, but like its other stats are really, really solid. At +2, you have a really solid amount of special attack. And under Trick Room, like 30, I think you speed tie with like Torkoal. That's how slow you are. So I think this thing under Trick Room could be pretty good. I just wanted to mention briefly. I don't know if with Terra how much that would really affect this mon. Like Ghost typing really isn't too bad, especially like the regular Ghost typing by itself really isn't too bad. So it just kind of depends on like what move pool they give this thing if it did come back and that type of thing. It gets Calm Mind as well, which is pretty good. Destiny Bomb, Disable, a few other things. So just want to talk about it real quick. Another mon is one of my favorites. This thing is one of my favorites from Gen 6 is Pangoro. I don't know how this thing is not in the game. I really missed this thing when it never came back with the Indigo disc. This is one of the mons I was hoping they would really add back, and they never did. It has really good abilities. Mold Breaker is great. Iron Fist is really good. Scrappy is really, really good. Granted, you probably won't be running Scrappy just mainly because you're already a fighting and dark type, so you're probably going to be running like Iron Fist. But I think with a Terra, this thing could be really, really good. It has the same typing as stuff like Scrafty, which is already in the game, so it'll probably be like really, really Terra reliant if it does come back, but it's just a really good mon. It has really solid stats. It also is really slow to the point where you can actually kind of run this thing in Trick Room. I think it'd be really solid to try to throw it into like a Trick Room type team and that type of thing. It also gets priority with Bullet Punch. Gets Drain Punch, a few other things. A bunch of coverage moves. Mainly the punching type moves, which also get boosted by Iron Fist, which is huge. It just does so much damage. Knockoff's huge. It gets Parting Shot, a slow Parting Shot could be kind of cool. A few other things. If all this stuff does come back, I don't know, they could like gut this thing's move pool if it ever does return, but it gets Coaching. I'm assuming to probably get that back once it comes, if it ever shows back up to the game, but I just want to talk about this. I think Pangoro is my favorite mons from like Gen 6. I don't know why this thing's not in the game. Another mon I wanted to briefly mention, I think this is Heliolisk. I think this thing would be decent in weather. Mainly for singles, I think this thing would be a little bit better in singles, but you could probably make this thing work in VGC. It has the Dry Skin, which is pretty good, and it also has the Sand Veil, which could be ran in sand. It could be a pretty solid mon to throw on like sand teams, which sand right now still doesn't really have that many options, so that would be also another really cool thing. And then it also has Solar Power, which I think would probably be the best ability for this thing. You throw this onto like a Sun team with like a Torkoal and like a few Proto-Synthesis mons. With the Solar Power, you only have 109 special attack, but like with the Solar Power boost, it makes that a lot better. So you're getting pretty much, it's pretty much like a Life Orb boost on top, like probably like an item you're going to be holding. So the normal electric typing really isn't the greatest typing. Electric's decent, but the normal typing doesn't really do much for you. But I don't know, I think it'd be decent. Like this could be another mon that you can kind of slap onto weather teams, and maybe with Terra you can do something. Its move pool is also kind of limited. Like you kind of get normal and you get electric stab and a few other like minor type coverage moves. You also get glare. That ain't too bad if that comes back. But apart from that, your move pool is a little bit lacking. I don't know. I guess Weather Ball. Weather Ball in the sun could be kind of cool. Now we're cooking. Fire type weather ball in the sun with a Terra Fire. Now we can cook. Now we're cooking. I don't know. I figured I'd mention it just because I think it would kind of fit on some weather teams, which could be kind of cool, which, I don't know, it's kind of lacking. There's a lot of stuff in the game right now, especially with solar power. I think the only other solar power mod in the game, I think, is Charizard. There might be one or two other ones, but they're not good, so I don't know. That'd be kind of cool to have. I want to mention Silvally real quick, just mainly because you can throw this thing with any type. I don't think this will ever come back, though, because the main thing with this thing is, like, it would kind of break the Mon's identity, because you're forced to hold an item, like a Silvally plate or an RKS system type item with a disc, to get this thing into a certain type that you want. But then being able to Terra into a different type would kind of go against the identity of this Mon. I think that's something at least Game Freak would probably not like to have. I'm assuming that's kind of what their thought process would be behind Silvally. That's why I think this thing will never come back. There's probably a better chance a lot of these other Mons return than Silvally does. I think it's going to be forever stuck in like Gen 7 or wherever it's still at. So I don't know was this in Sun and Moon or Sword and Shield. I'm not sure. It probably was. I think all the Mons were available there, but I don't know. It has 95s. I don't think 95s are really that great anymore either. I think we're moving on to the point where I think 95s across the board really still isn't the greatest. You're better off having like points and stats that you're going to use and not just have overall good in everything and just kind of mid at best. I don't know. But you also have the typing, so I don't know how that would really go. If you have a solid move pool, you get coverage for pretty much every single type being a Silvally, so I'm not sure. Kind of one of those Mons that you kind of scratching your head on how they would actually really handle and if it would actually be good anymore if it did come back, especially with Terra, and how that would actually really work. But and then you also don't have an ability, so you're kind of locked out of abilities. So you're playing a Mon that has no ability to begin with, just because you're trying to use your ability to match your type. So. And then last but not least, I want to talk about Dracovish. I think this thing would be absolutely fucking busted if it came back. This is another Mon that Smogon would start crying over the instant it got put back into the game, and they would instantly ban this thing up to Ubers within like 2 hours. Just like they did to Terrakion when it dropped to PU recently this month. It took them, if you guys don't know, Terrakion, at least when I'm recording this, dropped to PU for the month of January. And it was in PU for 2 hours, and they banned it from PU in the span of 2 hours after the tier shifts earlier this month. That is how much of fucking fun police the Smogon council is for each tier. I think it's actually NUBL for whatever reason. I think they moved up to NU, and I think within the next 2 days, NU banned it up to NUBL. That's just how fucking stupid Smogon is. I don't know. Granted, I don't play the lower tiers, and let alone do I really even play Smogon much anymore, so maybe there was something I wasn't really inclined to actually know about, but that's beside the point. We're talking about Dracovish. I think this thing would be crazy. Do you guys know how Fish's Rend works? It's an 85 base power move that doubles in power if you're the first one that moves on the turn. So if you're the fastest one and you outspeed your opponent, it doubles in power. It goes up to base, I think, was that 170 something power, plus a water Terra on top of that, plus either a choice band or a choice scarf. That would be fucking crazy. It really is. And you also have Strong Jaw. I don't know if Fish's Rend actually counts as like a biting type move. I'm assuming it doesn't, but you also have a bunch of other Strong Jaw type moves. You have Crunch, Ice Fang, a bunch of other stuff to use with this thing. I think this thing would be one of those mods that gets instantly sent right back up to Ubers again. I really do. But for VGC, though, I think it would stay. It would be a solid mod to have. It also gets some solid abilities. It gets Water Absorb, which ain't too bad. And then Sand Rush. I think this thing under Sand could be really good. Imagine Sand Rush Dracovish with double speed. 75 base speed would be double speed. It's not as fast as like Excadrill is, but it still would be like your more middle speed ranges for like a Sand types, like Sand Rush type sweeper. So I think that'd be kind of solid, especially like Fish's Rend being outspeed and just do that much damage. That'd be kind of crazy. I don't know. I think out of all the fossils, at least for the ones that are kind of like alongside Dracovish, though, I think this is probably still the best one. I don't know about the other ones coming back, but there's a bunch of other stuff I want to talk about as well. I just don't want this video going for like 2 hours. So like I said, if you guys check the list. I think there's a list on like our Pokemon right now that has all the like the 200 plus mons that have not returned. What mon is currently not in Scarlet Violet that you wish would come back at some point within at least the next few months, or hopefully before Gen 10 ever shows up within like the next year? Because hopefully they bring back all the, at least the majority of like the 200 mons that are currently missing from the game. I think it would really spice up the game and give a lot more content to the game, especially now that we're not going to be getting any more DLC or like any like major updates to the game. I think adding some of the other Pokemon that are currently not in the game would be pretty good to actually start doing. So I think, at least for me, the only other mon I'd probably mention on this list would probably be like Auroras and like Tyrantrum, because I think they're not in the game either. Those would be two other mons that I actually was going to throw on this list, but I just never had time because I didn't want the video to go forever. But I think, at least for me, those would be two other like fossil mons I think would be really good coming back, especially Tyrantrum. Tyrantrum is one of my favorite fossil mons. I think it'd be pretty damn good. And Auroras being able to Terra and get rid of its like really bad rock ice typing, that'd be kind of cool. So, but if you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, share the video. If you guys like these types of videos, I'll keep on doing more of them in the future if this video does well. I gotta do a bunch more stuff over here on the channel. I also stream over here at least 2-3 times a week sometimes, usually Friday and Saturday nights, and I usually stream over on Twitch sometimes on Sunday nights. So if you guys are not following the channel or subscribed, do so you don't miss out on any videos or when I'm live. Apart from that, I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you guys in a future video.